Kensil Culture, Puppets, Props, Puns, Podcasts.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Kensil Culture.
I'm sorry. I got to go. I'm sorry. I got
Pop Culture
gig.
Magazine, and we have a special guest today, all the way from Long Island. Let's have a nice hand for one of the funniest comedians out there, the joke teller himself, Joke Land. Let's hear it for Jackie Martling.
Hey,
all right.
I'm not sure why I'm doing a show called Cancer Culture, but
Kensil, this is John Kensil over here. He's, and it sounds like cancel culture. So, has anybody approached you like that? Any of those woke people? Then telling
no, I got my cancer all on my own.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have paid any to win. I've been doing
I get it once in a while.
I've been doing the same horse crap for 50 years, and I'm not changing nothing. I don't say midget anymore. I never did say the N word, the K. There's nothing more disgusting than saying the N word or the F curse. So, to me, that almost is more insulting than, that's, it's not like you're not saying it, but you play by whatever rules they want. But I heard all the words. What I do. If they think what I'm doing is being offensive, they're out of their mind. I'm there for the funny and no other reason, and everybody knows that. I hope.
And recently I had read because that everybody likes to get those jokes out of old magazines, but I read an old Boy's Life, and in there was a cleaned up version of the two flies landing on a pile of dung. Okay. I swear to, and Boy's Life. And I thought, how perfect is that?
Listen, what goes around comes around, comes around. I mean, I've been such a student of this crap for so long. The first joke I ever told on stage was from Boy's Life. And
Highlights. How about Highlights magazine? Remember?
That was the
dentist office.
Yeah, that was the low life of the whole thing, because Boy's Life always had Think and Grin.
Okay,
which automatically got Boys Life if you're a Cub Scout or a Boy Scout. And they asked me when I think I was in 5th grade.
Uh-huh.
I never knew why, but they asked me to host, to MC the Blue and Gold Dinner. They had a thing in Cub Scouts called the Blue and Gold Dinner where the kids...
I was a wee blow.
Right, you do. And the Cub Scouts would come with their father to this dinner, and it never dawned on me, like, what if the kid's father was dead or something? I guess they'd stay home. But they asked me to be the MC, and I literally had to come home and ask my mother, what does MC mean? And she says, Master of Ceremonies. And I swear to you, that things in show business never go away in your mind. Nope. And we did this Blue and Gold Dinner, and to host this, they had to get a box, like a beer box or a beer crate or an orange crate, and put it behind the podium because I was so short. I needed
like Alan Ladd.
Oh, Jim.
Talk into the microphone. Nobody told me what to do. As far as I knew, I was going to lead the Pledge of Allegiance and introduce the Scoutmaster. And I was looking through Think and Grin in Boy's Life, and I saw this joke, and I said, you know what? I could make this about Mr. Bot. I didn't know anything about the concept of switching a joke or adding somebody, just like my stupid little 5th grade mind. And I said, I went up on the microphone. The first thing I said, last night, Mr. Bot had a dream that he just...
Good old Mr. Bot.
Don't call me now. God.
Sorry.
I said, Mr. Bot had a dream that he jumped out of an airplane with a parachute. And after he jumped out of the airplane, he pulled the ripcord and nothing happened. And then he woke up, and when he woke up and got out of bed, his pajamas fell down. Not only it was but it was almost like a dick joke. It was like the first thing and of course they roared, and like I'm sure the scoutmasters looked at me like, "What the fuck are you doing?" It took me years before I remembered that. But how funny is that? And that I actually went
Boy
back
Scout
and tried
too?
to locate that joke, because if you go, everything's on the internet now. You can go back to all those thinking grins, but I don't know what year, what month. You know what I mean?
Oh, I was just looking through them because if I can't carry them, I'll rip out the jokes in the back. Like in Playboy, I used to rip out the jokes out of the magazine, but you turned me on to 6 to 60.
Those were great.
Those were great. They had like dirty pictures that were drawn in, like dirty cartoons.
But 99 out of 100 of those things were so terrible. And you know who made the famous guy, Gershon Legman? I don't know if you saw The Aristocrats, but the guy who was the all-time great collector of jokes in the world. He had put out 2 huge volumes, and he's so interesting. He was so interesting. He made his living in France, selling jokes to that guy in Texas for that $5 a joke for 6 to 60.
It was like
I got them all. That guy, Gershon Legman, world famous. There were certain issues I didn't have, and he had all of them. And
Okay.
I sent him money, and he would take the bus from where he lived in France to go down to where they had a printer or a copy machine.
6
and he
to
would copy
60.
all the pages of the Sex to 60s and mail them to me over here in the United States. Like nobody even believes that. I mean, because first of all, how do you explain to somebody what Sex to 60 is if they
I know,
know?
yeah, it was.
Hey, I don't know if you can see. Where's this pointed?
The joke files over there.
Yeah, that down there in the bottom. That's all those piles. Those are all Sex to 60s down there.
You're the greatest, man. You're my idol now. I can't believe. It was hard to find a good joke in Reader's Digest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in Sex to 60, you could always go there, and you felt like I always felt they were for like hillbillies and down south for the folks.
Hey, and the 2-bagger joke that I'm famous for selling to Rodney was told to me by a guy who was told to him by some guy from Tennessee, because it was called the Tennessee 2-bagger. And I came across that joke in one of the Sex to 60s. You know what I mean? Nothing's new under the sun. You know that. You know that.
It was a more recent boy's life, okay? And so I think you went the full Mandela on there. I'd love to hear that. I forgot it was called Think and Grin, but that's what it was called. And it was, oh man. Now, we have a segment that we talk about Mad Magazine, and how did that influence you? Did that influence you, or did you? Yeah, we here at Kensil, we love Mad Magazine.
Yes,
we're brought up by. Oh my gosh!
That's Don Martin.
Don Martin
with the picture of John and Yoko.
Oh
Don
man!
Martin's version of John and Yoko. That's me and Nancy.
That's
joke when Nancy hired Don Martin to do that for us. I was such a fan. Yeah, I actually went to Dick DiBartolo's apartment about 5 years ago.
Well, he influenced so many people with his sound effects, even all those words that he had, like boing, or boink and Mr.
Yeah, words you've never seen anywhere else,
Right, exactly. I mean, that's what made him, sort of Dr. Seuss like.
When I put my first album out, I sent it to everybody in 1979, and I sent one to William M. Gaines, the publisher, and letter, and asked him a bunch of questions, and he didn't write me back. He sent me my letter back with his answers in the column and under the questions. Do you like Rodney? Of course I love Rodney. Did you like my album? Yeah, blah. And I sent one to Don Martin, and I could pull it up if I knew you were going to talk about this. He sent me back. He actually did a pencil drawing because one of the jokes in my album was, how did Captain Hook die? He wiped with the wrong hand, right? And he actually sent a cartoon, a simple pencil drawing of Captain Hook, and he's picking his nose with his hook. And Jackie, thanks for the album, which is, I don't know if it's worth anything, but it's classic,
Oh, of course it is. He's one of the backbones of why there were so many comedians during the 80s. I think that Mad Magazine was responsible for it. And
the guy I do my podcast with, Peter Bales, that was our jumping off point in 1979. He said, Mad didn't get less funny. He said, we just changed our senses of humor,
Yeah. I got a couple of the newer ones, and they're
It's not the guys we grew up with, like Mort Drucker and Sergio. Or
it's not intelligent as it was, but you can still pick and choose and find something to laugh at.
But those marginal thinking departments, what's his name? Mort Drucker lived in Syosset.
Yeah,
his daughter was a good friend of my girlfriend's when they were kids. And that's why in all those movie parodies and TV parodies, whenever there was a map or something, you'd always see Syosset or Hicksville or Long Island Railroad Station.
Yep.
I used to get such a huge kick out of that.
They look like Long Island people. Didn't they look like Mad Magazine looked like Long Island people because they had the same style and the same sort of mores, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, and, same lack of style.
Yeah, it was
real middle class, ball breaking.
Yeah, I guess that's where those guys came from. I mean, they were pretty comfortable. They had all those spook magazines before, all the pulp magazines, and they made them stop. So they wanted to make something funny, and they made Mad Magazine.
William M. Gaines got pulled before Congress because they thought it was I don't know if it was communist or they thought it was bad for kids. Those original Mad Magazines, they were little paperbacks, and they were wild. And then he went
Blackboard Jungle out there.
Right. And I had such a everybody had the baseball cards that the mothers threw away. I had a zillion Mad magazines, and at one point they disappeared. And I said, "What happened?" My mother had opened one of them. And remember, there used to be the Mad Primer or the Mad Primer, whatever you call it.
Oh, yeah. It would be.
This, and there was something about farming. And the farmer said, where's Charlie? Oh, Charlie's out behind the barn smoking reefers, which I, of course, had no idea what that meant. But that was enough for my mother to throw away all the, Meanwhile, she was a crazy, but she, talk about hypocrisy. My God.
When they did Archie, they called it Starchy. Okay, back in the day. Okay,
that was actually that's so long ago that was I think in one of the little books.
Right. But that was one.
They were vicious. They were. I think they took a little of the edge off when they moved to the bigger magazines because those little ones,
When in the one of the panels, they're emptying out Veronica's handbag, and a reefer and a syringe fall out. Okay, just like in the back. How they used to have those sneaky little jokes in there.
Right.
I love them.
The marginal thinking department. Remember, they'd have a theme and they'd have little things actually written in the margins sideways.
You worked for a couple magazines that you worked for the Penthouse, right?
You know what happened? The guy, Richard Bleiweiss, the art director of Penthouse, was a huge Stern Show fan. And he asked me if he could interview me for the magazine. And I said, "Are you kidding?" Of course. So I said, it'd be really fun if after each of the questions and the answer, we put a dirty joke. And he said, "Okay." So he interviewed me, and it was a long interview. It was, I think 1988. I'm not exactly sure. And then he called me up and he said, "Wow, we got such an incredible reaction to your jokes. We want to do a monthly thing." And I said, "That's great." So I did the monthly Penthouse joke page for at least 10 years. I'm not sure exactly how long, but my joke page, Playboy has the centerfold,
Right.
and the jokes are on the back of
Right.
the
So they
centerfold
copied they copied Playboy.
The only time that my jokes were on the back of the centerfold was my first one, which was June 1990. And after that, they would randomly put it someplace else in the book. But my first joke page was on the back, and the girl who was the centerfold was a huge Stern Show icon, Amy Lynn Baxter. And it was so funny because if you held up my jokes, you could see her pussy. It was, and she's a dear friend, that was always our bond, and I always
it's like a watermark on a dollar bill,
Instead of a guy goes into a bar, I put Minervini goes into a bar, or Hawthorne goes into a bar, and the guy's always got a kick out of seeing their names, God, I did that for a long time, man. Wow.
That was I thought that was the pinnacle of having the greatest job in the world, is being able to. Did you get to mingle with any of the playmates or whatever they called them over there?
Yeah, I'd get invited to the parties, and it was always fun. The greatest story came out of one of those parties, but it wasn't a Penthouse party. It was a Playboy party. But it's funny. Me and Gilbert Gottfried did a photo shoot for Penthouse.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. And the idea was we were going to start out in incredible dressy men's clothes, and the girls dressed to the hilt. And then with each passing, pictures, we had on less and less and less and less. And we started out with, coats, long British overcoats and top hats and a cane and everything. And slowly but surely we lost what we were wearing till we got down to these ridiculous boxer shorts. And of course the girls were naked. And they're all walking around naked. They're so pretty and it's so fun. And like a couple of days later, Blywise says that, the Penthouse was right there on Broadway, Upper Broadway. He says, why don't you come over and have a look at the pictures? So I go to look at the pictures, and I go in, and they have the light board, and the thing that you look with your eye to look at the picture.
Sure.
And I'm looking at them, and this girl comes over, and she was a little tough on the eyes, I mean, a little well worn, And she said, "Oh, Jackie, how'd the pictures look?" And I'm like, "Pretty good." And we're standing there, and Blywise comes over, and she says, "Oh, Rich, these pictures are great. It's funny. Jackie didn't recognize me without my face. They must have got there 5 hours early and had their faces made up. You couldn't, once I knew, I was like, oh, that's Janine, like, holy Christmas. They must spend
Jackie, they have tricks now. Okay. They can make guys into women. I was in burlesque for 10 years, and the mousiest, homeliest little girls would come in, and they would spray things over their bruises, and they would, they would cake on the stuff and put this, and they were gorgeous, and that's,
what was always funny. What was always funny was when you were on the road in the early 80s, you always see the same, there's Soupy Sales and there's Dom Herrera, whatever. They always had the same 8x10s in all the clubs because all of us worked the same clubs. And there were always a couple of 8x10s of women. And you'd see them, and they were like cute or, attractive. And I remember I showed up for some gig. I think it was in the South somewhere. And I got off the plane, and this ugly little troll comes up to me and says, "Hey, Jackie, we're working together." And I looked at her, and she told me her name. And I mean, you had to stare at her and somehow in your mind morph that face into her 8x10 because it was such a quantum leap. Like, how do you say you're such a pig? You're 8x10. So, and I can't even, I think I remember the girl's name, but I'm not going to say because you get in trouble.
They were the original glamour shots. You know how they get those glamour shots now that, And hey, and taste have changed. There's Lizzo out there. We can make fat girl jokes again. It's.
Jesus.
I mean, it's kind of weird, that some things are passable and some things ain't. So
Yeah.
you used to work for High Times too. Did you work for them?
Yeah, I got interviewed by
The two
them.
greatest jobs in the world, High Times and Penthouse.
I was very
Jackie.
good friends with Kennedy. Michael Kennedy owned the company, and literally the name of the company was Trans High Corporation. And they owned a few things, and one of the things they owned was High Times. And there was a great movie called Autofocus. I don't know if you ever saw it. You really should see it. It's the story of Bob Crane.
Yeah.
Who started out as a real, mom and pop DJ in California, really up and up great guy. And he wound up on Hogan's Heroes and wound up as a real slime ball, going around doing plays, like, at small theaters. And him and the guy he traveled with, and they would bang all the women and videotape them. But this in the days when the video players were,
it was gold. Yeah, nobody had that.
3/4 inch video. Well, I don't even know what kind of video, but the movie was so interesting because it starts off like
Greg Kinnear,
the colors and the reds and the greens, and as the movie progresses and he gets darker, the movie literally gets grainier. I mean, it's brilliant. It was unbelievable. And they had a big party for this. And I guess High Times was one of the sponsors, one of the investors in this movie. So me and Michael Kennedy were at the party afterwards, and I had some of my homegrown with me. It was so funny. I said, Kennedy, I got some pot with me. He said, oh, well, let's smoke a joint. And this was right after they banned cigarettes. You couldn't get a match in a bar. You know how you say to the bartender, you got a match? They didn't have matches. I can still remember. I'm with the owner of Trans High, and we're going around trying to grab a match so we could get. And then we went out and got stoned in a little cubby hole, and it was raining. I'm like, you couldn't even make this shit up. He was a great guy. He was a great guy.
Do you still, when you smoke now, do you get even though it's legal and it's a lot more accepted, I still have that, instinct to hide,
I hardly smoke anymore. I still grow pot. I have an attic full of so much weed. I give it to everybody. I mail it to everybody. I don't give a fuck. And and when I never cared. I've been growing it since like 1999 when I moved into my house here, because there's a nice little place that's kind of hidden away. But I live on Long Island on the North Shore at the Gold Coast. And Center Island is right next door with the richest people in the world. And every 5 minutes there's a helicopter going over. And I'm thinking they're going over the helicopter and they got a camera with a little pot leaf that can zoom in on, And I'm thinking, no, Jack, you're not going to spend that kind of money just to get your 20 plants. But I've been growing pot and giving it away for 20 years. And, and now this year's crop was mostly Gorilla Glue, which is just crazy good pot. But,
I love the name.
Masturbating, I forget. I forget to have sex with my girlfriend. I forget to smoke a joint. It's amazing what I forget. But it's great. You want some pot? I'll bring you some. I'll send you some. Where are you guys sitting? Philadelphia?
Yeah, Philadelphia. Yeah. And John's been opening my opening act for 20 years.
I have a truck.
He has a truck. Okay.
Hey, Peter Bales says hello. He would talk. He's my
Peter
co-host.
Bales, yeah, intellectual. I mean, he's a smart guy. Always was.
He's my co-host on my podcast, Stand Up Memories, and we're like the Smothers Brothers, And he was laughing about dancing around all your shit. It was always fun, and I have never been able to. There's a lot of bookings I just can't get in Philadelphia, and I think, believe it or not, I really think it's because of John DeBella. I really believe that he must be friends with people, because everybody's like, why aren't you working the Helium and why aren't you working the Keswick? And I'm like, I don't know. It's like there's a, Philadelphia was one of the biggest stern markets in the world. I mean, we were gods there. And you remember, I was headlining in Philadelphia before I met Howard. Like,
you were headlining the Comedy Works that we just had a reunion for the Comedy Works with Steve Young, okay, and Wayne Cotter was there, and the Mixed Nuts. Remember the Mixed Nuts? They all,
of course. And what was the guy with the bow tie?
Tommy Moore.
Tommy Moore.
No.
No.
Not Gabe. Garson.
What a bow tie? Not Norm Clark.
He's the only guy that wore a bow tie. And remember Judy, she passed away, right?
Judy Toll was a very good friend of mine, and for a long time, she was hooked up with Tom
Wilson.
Tom Wilson from Back to the Future.
Yeah, he wound up in the bully in Back to the Future.
Yeah, and they made a movie about her. Okay, called My Sister Judy or something, something like that. But she was very funny with Alice Dice Clay.
Andrea Nice Clay.
I remember getting a kick out of her, and I remember being very attracted to her, and I couldn't figure out which side of the fence she was on. Did she like girls or guys?
No, she liked guys, but she was.
I don't think her and Tom weren't a thing, though, or were they?
Yes, they were, and and I guess she had a crush on him, and he went on to bigger and better, or different, how people get.
He played the trombone in their act.
He what?
He played the trombone.
Yeah. Oh, he played the tuba, not the trombone. The tuba.
All right, tuba. Maybe that's what I meant.
And he said. I said, "Where's the tuba?" Because I got all the props. I'm saying, "Where's the tuba?" He said he was waiting for a plane. The tuba was there. He's going to check it in. He just left it at the airport. He said, "Look, I don't need this anymore."
At some point, yes.
Yeah.